Good evening. I'm Fred Jablin, Acting Dean of the Jepson School of Leadership Studies. I'm pleased to welcome you to the fifth program of the 2001-2002 Jepson Leadership Forum series, which I think you're aware this year explores issues associated with sports, society, and leadership. Given that the Winter Olympic Games will soon open in Salt Lake City, this evening's program is especially timely. Some might say it was even planned this way. Athletes that participate in the Olympics not only represent the best of the best in their particular sports, but they usually excel in self-leadership and team leadership as well. In other words, their leadership and followership abilities have been central to their success as athletes. Not unlike leaders in other walks of life, Olympic champions are usually ordinary people who have harnessed all of their energy and ability to accomplish extraordinary things. However, in contrast to leaders in other fields, Olympians are also often highly visible role models to millions and millions of people around the world, especially young people. Their words and actions and those of the Olympic movement generally are closely watched and listened to. Actions that bring into question honor in Olympic competition or raise concerns about the ethics of decisions of the leaders of the Olympic movement tarnish the high ideals most of us associate with the Olympics. Such actions also detract from the extraordinary deeds, both on the field and off the field, of most members of the Olympic movement. Tonight, we are fortunate to have 5 U.S. Olympian champions with us who will discuss issues associated with the Olympics, society, and leadership. These athletes include martial artist Arlene Limas, track and field star Willie Davenport, swimmer Beth Scott, wrestler Buddy Lee, and swimmer John Naber, who will lead the discussion among this distinguished group of former Olympic game competitors. John Naber captured 4 gold medals and 1 silver at the 1976 Olympic Games, breaking 4 world records along the way. One of the best swimmers in the U.S. that the U.S. has ever known, he now serves as a noted sports commentator and is one of the country's premier motivational speakers. During his swimming career, he won 25 national AAU titles and set a record by winning 10 individual titles as he led the UCLA swimming team to 4 undefeated seasons. In 1977, he received the James E. Sullivan Award as the nation's outstanding amateur athlete. He is a member of the U.S. Olympian Committee Hall of Fame, current president of the U.S. Olympians, an association of over 6,000 U.S. Olympic alumni, and the list of accomplishments goes on, including a stint within just the last few weeks carrying the Olympic torch on its way to the Salt Lake City Olympic Games. And I don't know if the torch is out here. Ah, it's back there. Well, we have the torch with us here as well tonight. Something you might find of interest about John, when I was reading up about him, is that until about age 11, he lived in Europe. And it was not until he returned to the States as a somewhat uncoordinated 7th grader that he joined the local recreational league swim team for a 2-week summer program. After that, he didn't swim again until he entered high school. In brief, through hard work and a focus on improvement, he developed as a champion swimmer in a very relatively short period of time. Now, before passing the baton along to John, and sorry I had to have at least one sports metaphor in there, I'd like to take a moment just to invite you to the next program in this series of the Jepson Leadership Forum, and that's to be held on February 18th at 7:30 p.m. here in the Modlin Center of the Arts. Our speaker on that night will be former NFL great Alan C. Page, who is also Minnesota's first African-American Supreme Court Justice. On the evening of February 18th, Justice Page will talk about athletes as role models. At this point, please join me in welcoming John Naber to the Jepson Leadership Forum.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. It's a privilege to be here, and I know that there's many claims on our time. The opportunity to do other things must weigh heavy on each decision we make. Every time you say yes to something, you say no to something else. So young Frederick over here said no to Power Rangers or something. And some people are saying no to Law and Order, or no to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, whatever it is. But thank you for coming tonight. It's a privilege to be here, and it's a privilege to be invited to speak on the subject of the Olympics. So lo, these many years after my games, my Olympics were a quarter of a century ago. And if Andy Warhol gave me 15 minutes of fame, surely I've used mine up a long time ago. But maybe I overstate my case, but I like to say that Olympic champions are greater heroes to their countrymen and women than even the winning quarterback at the Super Bowl, because in the case of the football player, half the country was rooting for the other team. But at the Olympics, all your countrymen and women rejoice. For a while, we spent moments in your living room on your television set, and you come home and like magic, doors begin to open. The mayor wants his picture taken with you. They make you the grand marshal of the city's 4th of July parade. Every Rotary Club in Kiwanis within a 2-hour drive picks up the phone and invites you to speak. Maybe if you're really good, get to see your face on a cereal box or hold up a credit card on TV. But almost always, you win a bunch of medals in your sport, you get invited to be the color commentator the next time your sport is on television. And that's how I broke into broadcasting, and it's that career as an observer of excellence that has kept me involved in the Olympic movement ever since. I've been lucky enough to personally witness 7 different Olympic Games. I've called over 32 different Olympic sports, and I love what the Olympics stand for. I love why they were created and what the ideals of the movement are all about. For those of you who don't remember, the Olympics were brought back to life. They existed in the ancient Greek era for 1,700 years. And interestingly, it was commercialism that brought those games to a close. They were brought back to life in 1896 when a French educator named Baron Pierre de Coubertin decided to reignite the Olympic flame, if you will. In the last quadrennial of the 19th century, the Games began in Athens, Greece, the country of the birthplace of the Olympic Games. Interestingly, they returned to Athens, Greece in 2004, just a couple of years from now. Why did Baron Pierre de Coubertin, at the time a wealthy noble, a man interested in education, what would be his interest in sports? Usually the bookworms and the jocks don't get along. What was it about the games that so enthralled him? Well, he wrote in his memoirs that the joy for him, the joy was encouraging a wide variety of the planet's best performers to seek human perfection. His desire was not to make better athletes, but to make better people. The Olympic motto in Latin, Citius, Altius, Fortius, swifter, higher, stronger. Note, it doesn't say swiftest, highest, strongest. In fact, it wasn't until later in the Olympic movement that medallions were actually awarded. Jesse Owens got an olive wreath that he wore around his head. The symbol of victory as the be-all, end-all of sport didn't come around in the origin of the modern Olympic Games, but it is something that has been creeping in more and more ever since. You see, greater than my role as an Olympic athlete is my privilege to serve as a parent to my daughter. I love my daughter. I want the best for her. I want her to be a well-adjusted, productive member of society. And I'm pleased to say that I enrolled her in the local swim team when she was about 8 years old, and she went out for the swim program. In the back of my mind, I had fantasies that someday she might walk in the hallowed steps of the opening ceremonies. But it didn't surprise me that her love of swimming was limited only to splashing when the weather was hot, and she didn't want to be John Naber's daughter in the 50-meter jungle, and so she gave up the sport relatively quickly. But if I think about it in honest terms, what I really wanted her to do was to get out of swimming the same thing I got out of swimming. I'm not talking about a college scholarship. I'm not talking about a career in broadcasting. I'm not talking about a swimsuit deal with Speedo, but I'm talking about the life lessons that sport can teach. Sport is supposed to develop the characteristics that allow us to succeed in life. Every swimmer who goes to the Olympics can enjoy a personal victory by being the best that they can be. The great football player, Vince Lombardi, is often misquoted as saying, winning isn't everything, it's... That's what they say, isn't it? People think he said, winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. But that's not what Vince Lombardi said. Vince Lombardi said, winning isn't everything, but the will to win is. And that's an entirely different take on it. Now no longer does the success belong only to the first to the finish line, but rather if everybody tries their best, it's the trying to be the best that allows us to learn all the other lessons. The Latin Citius Altius Fortius. I took Latin growing up in school. I kind of like the derivative of modern words. And the word competition, not a battle against each other, but you take the word competition and you break it up into its derivative roots. You get com, meaning together, petition, meaning to seek. Competition is together we shall seek to discover who's the fastest, who's the strongest, who's the whatever it may be. It's like two young schoolboys standing back to back and measuring who's the tallest. Everybody wants to be the tallest. Only one person can, but it's the desire to discover together that allows sport to have its greatest impact. And yet we watch professional athletes today and we wonder what kind of lessons can we learn from them? We have NBA basketball players who are literally choking their coach. NFL, the football sport, passed a rule that said you cannot celebrate in the end zone after a touchdown because the showboating was too extreme. NHL hockey players. The only time the footage makes TV news is when there's a fight breaking out on the ice, and that's how people get their attention. We had NHL players on the Olympic team in Nagano, Japan, and when the American hockey team did not win a gold medal, those athletes trashed their Olympic Village dormitory rooms, breaking glass and throwing television sets out the window. The misbehavior in professional athletics today teaches me that something is amiss. My father was a management consultant. He was an efficiency expert, and he used to visit corporations, and they would ask him to solve their problems. He had to discover where their inefficiencies lie. He would begin every report with the sentence, "Your company, your system is ideally engineered to produce the results you're getting now." That the company you have is perfect to produce the results you're getting now. And therefore, if you don't like the results you're getting now, something needs to change. Albert Einstein, the great physicist, he said ethics applies to physics. I said that wrong. He said relativity applies to physics, not ethics. So the ethics we teach, the character we demonstrate, is revealed in athletic competition. I like to think that the character we learn is taught through the leadership we put ourselves under in athletic competition. Leadership, quite simply, is the ability to get other people to do something. Adolf Hitler was a great leader. He got a lot of people to do something. He's not a great man, but we think about leadership as the ability to change other people's behavior. And I remember vividly the lessons I learned through my years in sport. Before my freshman swimming season, I played water polo at Woodside High School, and I was the seventh man. 6 players in the pool, so I'm the first guy off the bench. And 5 minutes into the first period, I look around, and my teammate Jeff is huffing and puffing, and my teammate Bill is playing rather well. And the coach says, "Naber, you're going in for Bill." And I said, "Coach, don't you mean Jeff?" And the coach said, "Sit down, Naber, you're done." I didn't get to play that quarter. But didn't I learn a lesson? I learned a very clear lesson about questioning authority in public, about arguing with the coach in the middle of a game. And that character stayed with me long after the memory of the result of that game is long forgotten. Sport, in particular swimming, taught me how to set my alarm clock at 8:30 every night so that it would ring at 5:22 every morning. That's the act of commitment. But at what hour do I respond to the act of discipline? At 5:22 every morning. Sport taught me that. Sport taught me how to set a goal, how to realistically appraise how fast would the rest of the world be years down the road, and that became my target. Sport taught me how to encourage my teammates in the middle of a difficult set, because that would encourage them to encourage me when I got tired. Sport taught me that it's okay to suffer a little bit every day in practice so that you can enjoy the great delights of swimming well in the meet. In 1976, the Winter Olympics, a girl named Sheila Young-Akowitz won the gold medal in the 500-meter sprint skate. And I saw the award ceremonies on television as she's standing on the top of the award stand, and as the silver medalist is now receiving her award, Sheila's lips were moving to herself. I met her at a cocktail party years later. I said, "Sheila, what were you saying during that point in time, during those award ceremonies?" And she said, "Oh, I remember thinking to myself how grateful, how glad I was that I had done enough work 5 years ago so that I wouldn't have to stand there tonight." Sport taught her the value of delayed gratification, the value of investment in our dreams years in advance. But sport is not teaching that to our youngsters to the same degree it used to. As a parent, I wish it would. Parents give their sons tubas not because they expect them to play at Carnegie Hall someday, but because they know that participation in the school marching band will teach them skills that will last them a lifetime. And yet nowadays I perceive that the Olympic Games, or professional sports for sure, the rewards of success, the multi-million-dollar prizes for being a good athlete, make victory really the only thing that is perceived as worthwhile. How many of you can name for me today 3 Olympic athletes from the United States of America whose best performance was a silver medal? Any 3 Olympic athletes whose best performance was a silver medal. It's hard, because this country tends to think, if I don't win, it's not worth our while. For us, winning appears to be everything, and not even Vince Lombardi would support that. So where do we go? How can we fix this? The system is ideally designed to produce the results we're getting today. I think back to one of the fundamental behavior-altering truths in science. We have to reward the right thing. We have to punish the wrong thing. As my water polo coach was willing to lose the water polo game because the 7th man was not going to play, instead the 8th man did. As he was willing to sacrifice his team's goal-scoring ability in order to teach a lesson of success, we too must be willing to lose in order to win the big battle. And so coaches should not be fired on the basis of their win-loss record, but rather that should be taken into account and compared to the character skills that the athletes are learning. We need to listen to the little voice inside of us that's yelling, "The emperor isn't wearing any clothes." That so far, all that you see on the cover of Sports Illustrated is based on their results on the field of play. But how many of you would be more happy to see your daughter or son go to the senior prom with an Olympian than with some of the athletes in professional sports today? The Olympic movement still carries with it that magic, Maybe it's in some cases misplaced. We have our Tanya Hardings, we have our Dream Team basketball players, we have our International Olympic Committee bribery scandal. The IOC is subject to the same temptations that the rest of us feel. But Michael Josephson of the Josephson Institute of Ethics is fond of saying that our character is revealed when the price of doing the right thing is more than we're eager to pay. Everybody is willing to go on a diet until they get hungry. And so we have to put the cart back in front of the horse, or the horse back in front of the cart. We have to remember that the only reason sport exists is to make better people. And whenever sport is teaching something other than that, changes need to occur. I don't know if you watched or read the USA Today daily newspaper on Friday of last week. There were two major articles in the sports section that talked about how lawyers were fighting to get their athletes on the Olympic team. In the sport of bobsled, a driver and her brakeman had been teammates all season long, and the week before the Olympic trials, the driver made a switch and kicked her pusher off and put in another pusher, and this other gal who's on the sidelines is using legal remedies to try to get back on the Olympic team. Or in the sport of short track speed skating, a young athlete who was vying for an alternate position on the Olympic team lost his spot when he believed the other athletes conspired and let a no-name win, denying him the points to make the Olympic team, and so he went to court and wanted to use lawyers to get him back on the Olympic team. Why would people be willing to behave this way in sports that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, nobody really cared about? Well, it's because success in sport does open doors. The mayor does want his picture taken with you. The folks at the Wheaties box do think about it. That the financial rewards in Olympic sport are rapidly approaching the opportunities available in professional sport. And it should come as no surprise that if winning becomes the only thing that matters, then obviously cheating to some degree at some point becomes an option. Leadership is getting other people to do something. If they wanted to do it anyway, you'd be the most popular person in town. Leadership translates into courage when you get other people to do something that they don't feel good about doing. They don't feel happy about doing. Maybe it's going to cost them a little bit. Leadership means standing up and yelling, "The emperor's not wearing any clothes." You can't run to the front of the parade and call yourself a leader. You have to blaze a new trail and convince people to walk your way. People at the front of the parade, the original leadership, is a parade of one. There's no guarantee that anybody will follow. And as such, if you would like to consider yourself a leader among men or women, you must resign yourself to the fact that the first few steps will be lonely and frightening. If you are an alumni of the University of Richmond, and a move is afoot to change the new coach because the win-loss record's bad, even though he's producing graduates on time with great character, if you stand up and say, "But he must stay," there will be alumni with donation checks ready to threaten, saying, "We gotta win, we gotta win." You will be unpopular in some cocktail party banter. But leadership requires that you make the right move. Adolf Hitler was a good leader for bad reasons. If you want to be a righteous leader, you have to be willing to endure loneliness for the sake of what's right. The Olympic Games have a rare opportunity, but it's not nearly as easy to work a change at that level than it is to work a change at a local Little League or AYSO soccer program. To many degrees, these youngsters want to emulate what they see at the top of the pyramid, but in reality, these youngsters are by and large more easily affected by what they see mom and dad or coach or teachers actually say. The people on the front line to reward good behavior, to punish bad behavior. You may be the school record holder, you may be a record holder in the world, but if you don't come to work out on time, you don't swim. If you don't get your homework done on time, if you don't say yes sir, no sir to the people in authority around you, if you don't sit still and pay attention when mom or dad are speaking, there must be a price to pay. Leadership requires that we sacrifice our own personal comfort for the personal well-being of somebody else. For us to do what's right, it's got to hurt us a little bit in order to benefit somebody else so much more. I cannot think of a greater gold medal to be awarded than what Baron Pierre de Coubertin originally set out to do. Better than a college scholarship, better than a Wheaties box, better than a Nike shoe deal is the pursuit of human perfection, the most golden medal of them all. With that, I'd like to introduce to you 4 members of the United States Olympic family. Each one of them was chosen by me because I know that they understand what leadership and what the Olympic ideals are all about. In reverse chronological order, this young lady competed most recently at the Olympics in Sydney, Australia, in the Paralympic Games. Legally, she is blind, and even so, as a high schooler, she earned a full ride, an athletic scholarship in her sport of swimming. She's competed in many international games. Perhaps the most famous is a 7 gold medal performance at the Paralympic Games in Barcelona in 1992. She currently has 10 gold, 2 silver, and 5 bronze medals in Paralympic competition. She's also a volunteer coach. She's also an active member on the Chesapeake Resource Coalition, I hope I said that right, a group trying to bring the Olympics to this area of the country in the year 2012. Please welcome Beth Scott. Have a seat, Beth. In 1988, the Olympic Games were in Seoul, South Korea. As baseball is the American national pastime, in Korea, the national sport is Taekwondo. Taekwondo had never been an Olympic sport, but the host country was entitled to make any sport of their choosing a demonstration sport. And a woman who had never before been on a U.S. national team suddenly made herself the best American in the world, and she won the gold medal, the very first gold medal awarded to Americans at the 1988 Olympics in Seoul. Interestingly, the Koreans never thought that anybody other than a Korean could possibly win the gold medal. And when she was receiving her Olympic award and the American flag was flying, they had no American anthem to play. And so this young lady, in the silence of the auditorium, began belting out the tune of the Star-Spangled Banner. And 2 Americans and then 7 in the front started singing along with her, and pretty soon she had the entire arena singing her country's national anthem. Ladies and gentlemen, she is now coaching over 300 athletes in the sport of Taekwondo, and after a 7-year layoff, almost made the Sydney Olympic team. Please welcome Arlene Limas. He went to high school here in Richmond, a local boy made good. In 1992, he was an American at the Olympic Games in Barcelona in the sport of wrestling. And in fact, since then, he has translated his athletic success to professional success as well. You see, his coach told me earlier today that he noted that Buddy had more quickness than any other athlete he had ever coached. Buddy now uses that quickness in a training of jump rope. Buddy Lee's jump rope system is the state of art, the standard used in many of the USA national teams. And if we had a little bit more time, he'd be doing a little demonstration for us out here on the hardwood floor. Please welcome Olympian Buddy Lee. Two of the greatest honors that can ever be afforded to an Olympic athlete is to be voted by their teammates to carry the American flag into opening ceremonies or to carry the American flag in closing ceremonies. In 1976, I had the privilege of marching alongside our next Olympic athlete. You see, he competed in 4 Olympic Games, winning a gold and a bronze medal, setting a world record in the high hurdles. And then he went on to compete in Winter Olympics in the bobsled. He is a full bird colonel in the military running their sports programs, and he can tell us a little bit later about how many of the athletes under his charge have already qualified for Olympic team status. I am privileged to call him the first vice president of the U.S. Olympic Alumni Association. He is an outstanding spokesperson for the sport and a great sense of history for where the movement has been. Please welcome Colonel Willie Davenport. And now I've invited each of our 4 panelists to speak for 3 to 5 minutes on the subject of leadership as it pertains to their personal experience. We'll start with Bev.
Good
Beth.
evening. Thank you very much, John. It's a pleasure to be here this evening, and I'm so glad you all are so interested in leadership and making sure you are good leaders in life. I have been very fortunate to have represented our country 3 consecutive times at the Paralympic Games. But being a leader comes a lot of responsibility, and I've been glad to be able to talk to you this evening a little bit about that early on. But let me just reiterate some important points that I'd like to express to you all. Being a leader, you have the responsibility to make sure that every time that you're in the public's eye, or even out of the public's eye, that you are being a good athlete overall, if that's from our standpoint of things, but as a person. Because a leader, you're a natural person that people follow. So if you're being followed, whatever you do is being reflected onto these individuals. Therefore, in our world of athletics, the way we treat our fellow competitors, the way we treat our coaches, the way we treat our teammates and our friends, and anyone really of any kind of authority, including our competitors, we need to treat them with respect. And that's something that we're going to be discussing later on as well. I think in my experiences as an athlete, I have tried to do my very best to be a very good sports woman and be respectful of my competitors. Because in the sport of life, you win, and sometimes you do come in second. I don't consider that losing. But there are many, many wonderful things that come out of winning, and you need to share them with as many people as possible. If you are given that opportunity to be one of the chosen people to be able to be a winner in the sense of winning a gold medal, that you need to be able to share that with as many people as possible. So I really do make a commitment to share my experiences with as many people as possible. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity tonight.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Buddy. Buddy, I'm sorry I caught you with your mouth full. You're next.
Hello, Richmond. Be back home. Thank you, John. This is my hometown. And I'm really honored to have my coach here, which is Rudy Ward. Stand up.
Rudy, stand up.
Rudy Ward is my high school coach, and he's also the athletic director. But, this guy taught me a great deal about leadership. He was part of that support system that I needed. He set a great example. He was there for those extra hours that I needed to develop into a world-class athlete. I learned how to believe in myself. I learned how to do the extra things that it took to be better. and I learned how to never ever give up. And I learned a great deal from Rudy Ward. So we'll talk more about what Olympianism meant to me later. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy. Arlene.
Thank you for having me here. And John, thank you for having me. I've already enjoyed the evening, just interacting. When Olympians get together like this, it's a lot of fun. The stories start going. I saw you here, I saw you there. And John has always, whenever I interact with him, had a positive influence on me, because if you can't feel it from where you're sitting, John is a leader, and he exudes leadership. As an athlete, I've been very fortunate to have all type of leadership during my career. Good leadership and bad leadership. But still, learning experiences. I remember very clearly a basketball coach in high school who was probably 250 pounds overweight, coaching us, hollering at us every day on how we needed to be in better condition and in better shape. And he was our leader, and he did inspire me, but he didn't inspire me to be like him. So leadership comes in different forms. I've also had coaches, one in particular, who coached me all through the 88 games, who I remember very clearly. I thought he was absolutely crazy, because he called 3 workouts on Christmas Day. And I went home and I told my parents, I'm not going to make morning mass on Christmas Day because I have a workout scheduled. And they pretty much forbid me to go. But I still got up and went to my workout. And when I got there, we worked out maybe an hour. And my coach canceled the rest of the workouts. Probably one reason I was the only one from our team that actually made it. But he also wanted to prove a point. And before I left the gym that day, he said, Arlene, today you have a workout over every one of your opponents, because everybody else is resting on Christmas Day. He said, today you grew. When you feel down in the ring or you feel tired in the ring, you will know that you have one workout more than your opponents. So that's the type of leadership that gets athletes like this to that level, and we've all been privileged to have it. Now I feel my role as a coach, training young athletes, it's my duty to make my athletes feel that way, feel that committed, and to believe in themselves as much as my coach made me believe in myself.
Thank you, Arlene. Willie.
John, you give me a tough act to follow. I was even inspired by that. That's wonderful, and again, I do thank you for allowing me to spend a few moments with you to share some of my experience with you. I think personally that I have the leadership experience, both from an athletic point of view as well as a military point of view. So I can see it from the quote-unquote the professional angle, also from the athletic angle. And I think in life there's always someone who inspires you to do the best that you can do. I made a statement earlier about what a leader is. I think a leader is an individual who can convince you to do the best that you can do, whatever you do. My case, my inspiration was my mother, because to see her glow, to see her do, to be so proud of the things that I did, that was my inspiration of doing the best that I could do. And I found out later in life that it kind of added some other values to my life. It made me do better in school. It made me do better in the military as a leader. It made me do everything that I attempted to do the best that I could do. I tell young people all the time, athletics has a thing that I call a killer instinct. When you really want to do well, when you do well, success breeds success. And once you're successful at one thing, you want to continue success. John mentioned that I was in 4 Olympic Games. I think after the 4th Olympic game, it became repetitious, but the 5th one was really a challenge, and that was to go into the Winter Olympic Games. I guess the most proud thing that I feel about myself for doing that was the dedication about it. But most of all, we talk about winning and losing. I've won and I've lost at both of them. Most important thing to me is that every sport that I ever competed in, I became national champion. And John, I don't know if you know it, but I am U.S. Open racquetball champion.
I did know that. That's amazing. That's great. Let me go back through the order. Willie Davenport, you were on the 1968 Olympic team in Mexico City, right in the middle of the civil rights movement. And the black and white issue was big in the newspapers and the media in America. What role does sport have in leading its nation in human rights issues?
John, I said it in '64, and here's 2002, and I said the same thing again. The athletic world is the best ambassador this country can ever have. You look at any sport, at any level, at any country, there's no color barrier. It's purely athletics and one person against another person. The best I've ever heard was Valery Boyzov, who is a Russian. Well, two situations happened to me. Valery Boyzov says, I can't understand why Russia and America have this big feud. But we're athletes, and it's very, very difficult for me to even put them in words. But when we're there competing, we're competing as athletes, as human beings. I was in London back in the early 60s or middle 60s, and there's a lot of stuff about racial riots in Watts and et cetera, but it was confusing to a newspaper article. A newspaper writer says, I see you athletes, I see you guys, you're Americans, you're mingling together, eating together, playing together, et cetera, but what is this that I see on television? What you see on television is totally different in the athletic world. We are just, I wish I could find a word to let you understand what I'm saying or make them understand it, but it's not, it's just different anyplace else.
Does the Olympic movement have an obligation to lead the rest of the world in that area, or merely just to lead by example?
I think it's lead by example. It's not an obligation that we have. I think we athletes serve as military individuals. We serve this country, we represent this country. When we go abroad, when we compete at the Olympic Games, we compete as the USA, not as a race, not as an individual, not as a university. We go as the United States Olympic team. And we're made up of all people from all walks of life. You look at this table sitting here, I guarantee you that we all come from different parts of life, different areas. You know, some of us raised up in the ghetto, others raised up in the projects, others raised up in more affluent, but we're all Americans, we're all athletes, and come next couple weeks from now, we're going to be rooting for United States Olympic team. United States Olympic team. And that Olympics have something
it brings the world, it brings America
together.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like the rings. What are the rings? The colors in the ring mean something. The interlocking of the rings means something. Why are there 5 Olympic rings versus 6, etc.? All that means something. We talked about this. We know what those meanings are, but that's what that is, bringing people together. The modern Olympic Games, why? You know, they used to fight country against country, but during the Olympic Games, everybody lay down their arms, cross through their territories, go back, then they start fighting again.
The Olympic truce. Buddy, let me ask you, I hate to do this to you, but following your Olympics in 1996, an American named Kurt Angle won the gold medal in wrestling and has since converted that into a career as a worldwide wrestling, celebrity, if you will. What about the leadership responsibilities of doing something like that? How do you feel about the WWF as that sport, and is that something that Kurt should have done differently, is doing just fine? What do you think?
Well, Kurt is a friend of mine. He was a fellow teammate, and I salute him for what he's doing, because there's a difference. You know, you become an Olympian, and that's one part of your life, and how do you use those things to make the next transition. Well, Kurt is in the field of entertainment. He always wanted to go into the movies and entertainment. And professional wrestling is entertainment. I think we as people have to be educated as to what we watch and knowing the difference. You know, in the real sport of wrestling, I could never last a week being tossed around, jumping off
Hit by chairs and all that. Yeah.
like that. But no, he's an entertainer, and he does it well, and he comes back to our sport and give back to the sport. And he's a great guy, but it's all acting.
Do you think the public knows that? Do you think the kids in the front row here understand that it's all acting?
What do you think? You think it's real?
It's acting. Oh, good. You heard. All right. They understand.
Okay. I'm the real thing, you know, wrestling. You know, it's kind of nice to have a real athlete doing the fake stuff, because a lot of times they get these guys that are, you know, former bodybuilders, and they do steroids and stuff like that, and they go into this professional wrestling, which has done an outstanding job as far as marketing their sport, because all they're doing is marketing a product, and they're marketing guys that are huge, they do steroids, and they want these guys to put their body in motion, and that's what Americans like. But there is a difference, and it's not the real thing. So
Well, I'm going to hit you now between the eyes.
that's all.
I'm going to hit you now between the eyes. You just said they're marketing themselves, but they're doing a lot of steroids and they're pumping themselves up. And here is Kurt Angle, an American Olympic role model by your own definition, supporting that lifestyle, which, I don't know, do you think that there are high school wrestlers out there who are taking steroids because they see people like Chris Rock or The Rock on TV?
Well, I think high school wrestlers are taking steroids because sports in America is incredible business, and you know, people are doing whatever they can to get that advantage. But I mean, taking drugs is not the way. And I think Kurt Angle, he had about 2 years to decide to go that way. He tossed around with the idea, but I think after he didn't have any success in being a commentator, and he did some other things, so I guess he went into the professional wrestling. But I don't think he really promotes the steroids or whatever, but I think it's just a way of surviving right now.
Charles Barkley said, "I am not a role model." Are athletes allowed to say they're not a role model?
Well, I think, as I did, I chose realistic role models, like my high school coach. He was a person that I could go to, I could talk to. When I had problems, he was there. And I think, you know, as a whole, we're choosing unrealistic role models. I mean, if you don't know anything about these guys, how can they truly be a role model?
We should pick them carefully.
Barkley, you know, even though you don't like what he said, but it's true. You know, choose realistic role models. They're right around you. They're right in your neighborhood. They're right in your family. It could be your uncle, your teacher. I like to thank the teachers. They made a big difference in my life.
Great. Let me ask Arlene, your sport, Taekwondo, the martial arts prize themselves over all other sports because of the necessity to teach respect and humility and courtesy and things of this nature. What is Taekwondo doing that other sports can't do or aren't willing to do?
I just think it's the origin of our sports, the background in our sport that gives us that respect. Because the majority of people who practice martial arts or practice Taekwondo don't do it for any sport aspect whatsoever. They do it for self-conditioning, self-defense, self-improvement. So it's very different. And there are two distinct schools of thought within our martial art of Taekwondo. And that is one, to be a traditional martial art, where you are improving yourself, your body, your mind. And then there is the sport aspect of Taekwondo. And one of the things that has become very important is how you spell Taekwondo now. If you split Taekwondo into 3 words with a capital T, a capital K, and a capital D, that is traditional Taekwondo. Sport Taekwondo has now, the spelling has changed, and it's all one word with 1 capital T. And that is a distinction, that this is now sport Taekwondo. Now, there are a lot of people, myself one of them, who are unhappy about that. We like the aspect of having respect in our sport. And I personally prided myself on the fact that when my coach came into the gym, I stopped and bowed and acknowledged their presence. Because I had seen other sports having no respect for their coaches. Now, in turn, my team, although I'm not as, bow down to me in the grocery store, as maybe the coaches that I came up under, they are very respectful of me, and they will introduce me to peers and parents, whether it be at a local football game or outside the school or at a tournament. They're very respectful of me. So for me, I'm personally happy with this respect aspect in our sport. And it's a struggle that athletes like myself are fighting to hold on to.
Do you see a gradual degradation of the level of respect even in your sport?
Yes, sir.
Where's that coming from?
Well, it's coming from, more and more years as an Olympic sport, unfortunately. More and more years as considered a sport instead of a martial art. That's what has happened to us. Our athletes become bigger than the martial art itself, which it can't happen. I personally don't feel I will ever be bigger than Taekwondo.
You're a coach, though. What responsibility do you have for the character of the athletes in your program?
I'm very responsible for the character of my athletes. I can't say the same for many other coaches out there. Sometimes they're louder and more obnoxious than their athletes. But I think that there are enough, luckily for our sport, for Taekwondo, there are enough athletes as myself who are now becoming coaches and who are now grooming athletes under what I would like to call the right, the right way, that eventually our kids, our athletes are going to be on team and they're going to act the right way and they're going to show the sport in the light it needs to be shown in.
We wish you luck.
Thank you.
Beth, Paralympics versus Olympics. What are the differences and where is Paralympics heading?
Well, you know how much I feel very strongly about the subject. The Paralympics, just so you all know, are the second largest sporting event in the world, second to the Olympic Games themselves. And the Paralympics are for athletes, elite level athletes with physical disabilities, and many times people get confused with the Paralympics versus the Special Olympics. And the difference is that, as I said, the Paralympics are for the physically challenged, whereas the Special Olympics are for the mentally challenged. So there is a great difference there between those two types of athletes. And the Paralympics has a fairly short history, but yet it has a history which might surprise many of you in the audience tonight who might be hearing these words for the first time. But the Paralympics began in 1960 in Rome and have been growing and developing for many years. And they take place in the same Olympic venues as the Olympic Games. The first Paralympic Games that I attended were in Barcelona, which were the first time that the Paralympics were, the Paralympic athletes, when they won a gold medal, was the first time we were able to hear the national anthem when we won a gold medal. So we've really taken a lot of steps in developing the games to be more parallel with the Olympic Games, which is where the word comes from, Paralympic, parallel to the Olympic Games. So that's what it means, and basically, the development has been growing and moving, I think, in the right direction. I know more than likely we will never completely, fully parallel the Olympic Games. There will be some obstacles that will be very difficult to get over, but the games themselves have grown and developed so quickly, and the ability for us to gain exposure is quite similar, and actually acceptance is quite similar to what women in sports had to go through, and they're thriving right now. They're doing wonderfully. So if that's who we're following in the footsteps of, then I'm feeling really good about that progression. So
Are the Paralympians trying to follow the Olympic model, or are they trying to be leaders for other disabled individuals, or a bit of both?
I think it's fair to say we're a bit of both. I think how Paralympic athletes, when we go to compete, I think we really are embodying the true Olympicism that Baron de Coubertin was planning on preserving and wanted to preserve in the Games. It's not all about winning. It's not all about making a bunch of money doing it. I am a swimmer because I love swimming. And, You have to love the sport or be incredibly crazy to get up at 4:30 in the morning. So I love what I do, and I enjoyed the sport. And I didn't do it for any money. If I wanted to get into a sport that had money, I would have tried golf or tennis. And I don't know how great I would be at those sports. So how far did that ball go? But it's a sport. The Paralympics are really embody what I believe the Olympics are kind of getting away from. A lot of it is about money and power and publicity, and we're just hoping that someone will gain a little attention for these athletes because they're not being recognized and their accomplishments are not being seen. And the ability to motivate people is so great that I hope that the movement doesn't intensify.
Can you tell the Pam Fernandez story?
Oh, Pam Fernandez, yes. Pam Fernandez is a almost totally blind athlete. She lost her vision because she has diabetes, and she lost it when she was 21. And she is a tandem cyclist. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with tandem cycling, but it's two people on a bike, pedaling at the same pace, hopefully.
The front one is sighted, the rear one is
sighted,
blind.
Yes, so someone can see who's driving it. And they go around a track. And Pam and her, what they call the pilot, won the Paralympic gold medal in Sydney. But as phenomenal as that is, she also won the medal 2 days after she broke her foot in an accident when she was training at the Paralympic Games in Sydney. So this put her at a definite disadvantage, you'd think, mentally and physically. But here is a woman who really came back and said, look, I made it this far. I'm not going to let anything stop me. And she said that she really didn't feel her feet. She felt like she was just flying across that track. And her foot was so taped into the socket of the pedal, I guess you'd say. And she didn't feel her foot at all. She didn't feel like it was touching anything. So it didn't really cause her any pain. But I have a similar story, actually, in Atlanta.
But before you do that, I just want to mention that Pam Fernandez won the Olympic Spirit Award, which is given out every Olympic Games to the outstanding male and female story of human drama. When she broke her leg 2 days before her race, one of her roommates came up and said, but just think of the opportunity. If you go on with a broken leg and win the Olympics, what a human drama story that'll be. And Pam said, I would have thought the blind diabetic part would have been enough, but, but she won anyway, and that was the wonderful part, and she won the Spirit Award, and so now I'll let Beth tell her story.
Pam's a wonderful athlete and a very good friend of mine, and I'm glad that John, he was actually at that award ceremony, so he actually heard that firsthand. But in Atlanta, I had actually severed the main ligament in my knee a year prior to, and I was told by my doctors not to swim breaststroke. Well, my coaches told me not to swim breaststroke because I'm not really a breaststroker, but nonetheless, I was entered in the 100 breaststroke in Atlanta, and my doctor's like, well, you really shouldn't be swimming that. You could dislocate your knee in the middle of the race. This could be really bad for you. And I said, look, I can't complain about my little ACL problem when there are people who don't even have knees to complain about an ACL problem. So, it's all about understanding that you really shouldn't have an excuse because there's people out there that overcome so many things and haven't let anything stop them from pursuing their goals and dreams. And that, to me, is what the Paralympics really capture, is human spirit.
Thank you. I'd like to open it up for questions from the audience. We have microphones down here at the front. If you would be willing, come on down and address anyone of your choosing to any question you'd like. Please feel free to
Don't be shy.
step right up. Thank you. I dare you. Good. Come on down. By the way, as he's making his way down, I should let you know that we have a real 2002 Olympic torch here backstage. If any one of you want to see what the 2002 Olympic torch looks like, want your picture taken with it, immediately following the program, we are certainly eager to have you do that. Please come tell us your name.
My name is Matthew.
Ask away.
Ma'am, this is for the Taekwondo practitioner. I was curious as to the differences between the more martial Taekwondo program and a more Olympic-oriented program as far as the training. And also as a follow-up to that, if any virtues or the emphasis on virtue is sacrificed more in the Olympic program?
Well, on the second question, we're trying not to sacrifice any of those virtues like perseverance and indomitable spirit, the tenets of Taekwondo, if you're familiar with them.
Yes, ma'am.
We're trying not to sacrifice those, at least clubs like mine and other athletes that I'm close to, although there are many schools that do compromise those tenets. As far as sport and traditional Taekwondo, for example, in a traditional Taekwondo class, you would allow leg sweeps, maybe even knee attacks, attacks to the back. In sport, none of those things are allowed. In traditional Taekwondo, because it's a self-defense, you would be allowed to strike the throat with your hand or strike the face with your fist. In sport Taekwondo, we're not allowed to do that. We wear headgear, chest gear, protective equipment. Each fight is 3 rounds, much like a boxing match, and it's to the knockout. So it's different. Different than traditional sport. Although a sidekick is a sidekick in both traditional and sport, still different. We would never sidekick to the knee.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Please, step up.
I would like to ask you a question. Earlier, you challenged America for only acknowledging winning as an achievement. Do you think if America or an individual person had any other attitude that only winning is the highest form of achievement, do you think they could actually win? I mean, I don't personally believe you can win unless you think winning is the greatest achievement.
Understand, I do believe that all athletes at the Olympics should do their very best to try to win. But if an athlete doesn't win, America tends to think that their effort was for naught. And I have a problem with that. Because of the 5 Olympic medals I earned, the 1 silver medal is the race of which I am most proud, because it was so much faster than everybody, myself included, thought I could go. And so it's how do we treat people who don't win the gold that matters to me. I believe every athlete, and I think we would all agree, we all marched into opening ceremonies or flew to the Olympic Games expecting to win. And I don't have a problem with that. Now, telling all the media you expect to win, that's a humility issue. And that I do have a problem with that. I'd say, shh, keep it to yourself. But by all means, every night in the privacy of my bedroom as a high school junior, senior, freshman in college, I would rotate my shoulders and imagine touching the wall first at the Olympics, and I could hear the crowd, and I felt the weight of the medal many, many times before the Olympics. But that doesn't mean my silver medal was a waste of time. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Coming down the aisle.
Hi, my name's Tracy Ransom, and I'm a leadership major here at the University of Richmond. And, well, first of all, I just want to thank you guys for coming, and I was very inspired by everything that you said. I also am an athlete here, and I also had the amazing opportunity to be in Sydney for the Olympics, where I worked and got to go to a few events, and then I also worked at the Paralympics as well. But I'm doing my senior project on leadership and coaching, athletic coaching, and it's so appropriate to everything that you guys were talking about. And I was wondering if you could answer 2 questions for me or just throw out some ideas. And the first one is, what personal characteristics do you personally have that were developed by participating in athletics at the level that you're at? That's the first question. And then the second question is, thinking about your most influential coaches, what were some of their characteristics that they had that inspired you?
Let's go ahead and start at Buddy down there.
Well, I couldn't hear the first question.
Yeah.
No excuses.
Go ahead, please. Go ahead and repeat it.
Okay, first question is, what are some of the personal characteristics that you have from participation in athletics? Like how did you develop? What were some of those characteristics?
Well, I guess I'm a fighter, right, Coach? Overworking, just persevering, just never ever giving up and allowing anyone to take my dream away from me. Believing in myself, getting knocked down, and finding the courage to keep fighting. Focusing, never allowing myself to be distracted by the wrong things.
That's
and
good.
I guess commitment. Okay? And then the second question would be,
Coach, talk about things your coach said and did.
okay, that's one. I talked about my first coach, and my second coach in college was Billy Martin Jr. and Pete Robertson. They were great wrestling partners. And then I guess in the Marine Corps, I spent 11 years in the Marine Corps. After college, I became my own coach. So I was pretty much a self-made Olympian. Had to do the videotaping, had to study other wrestlers, and learn everything that it took to be a coach as well as athlete. So I was a coach and athlete.
I'd like to briefly say that in the early going in my career, I was a good follower. You can't be a leader when you're just starting out. You can't pretend to know where you're going, and you have to choose your role models, choose your leaders carefully. And so choosing the right coach, choosing the right program, choosing the right role models was very important to me because I was eager to follow my leader. And I think that's a critical element in the early going, and also the belief that it's possible. Every one of us felt we could be an Olympic champion long before it was actually potential. And it's that faith in the unseen, the willingness to dare to believe, the hope that the crowd will eventually, the parade will eventually form behind you that allows you to march off with confidence. I'll let Willie go.
I think to answer your question, my answer to both of your questions is confidence. I say that because my coaches, every coach that I've had from high school on through college and after college, each one of those coaches was very capable individuals. They were very knowledgeable of the event, which in turn I became very knowledgeable of my event, and I would challenge anyone in the world to the fact that there's nobody living know as much about the hurdles as I do, from all aspects, from the mental aspect, from the kinesiology. I remember in college I did a study of kinesiology of the movements of the hurdles. I did an entire study of it, so that gave me confidence in what I've done, and the way I do it, and why I do what I do. I studied every competitor. I know their weak points. I know their strong points. On a cloudy day or a cool day indoors, or in lane 1 versus lane 6, you give me a situation and an individual, and I tell you exactly what they're going to do. So it was the confidence that we had, that I had, and the confidence that I had in my coaches.
Beth?
Well, I have to agree with everything that everyone said about describing what an athlete has to be. One important quality I think a coach has to have is a coach has to absolutely 100% believe in his athletes or her athletes. If your coach doesn't believe in what you can accomplish, coming to practice and coaching you to do that really doesn't make any sense. Because if they don't believe or they don't see you being successful within the sport that you've chosen to pursue, it's really hard to envision yourself doing those things. I had a coach in college who wasn't one of the greatest coaches in the world. He wasn't known, but he was by far someone who influenced me incredibly, because he came into workouts, and when we had what we called test sets, where you have to go as fast as you possibly can with very little rest, and they're taking your splits and your times, you're expected to do your best at that point in time. And you're tired and you're exhausted, and it's usually in a day that you just don't feel like doing it. But I'd step onto those blocks in practice, and he'd tell me that you're going to be the next conference champion in this event. And as much as I didn't want to believe it, it was like planting a seed in my mind, saying that this is a possibility, and you need to work towards that. And I honestly, in the beginning, didn't believe it could happen. I hoped it would. But to have that influence coming from someone all the time, constantly, is definitely a really good attribute in a coach. And you need to have a coach who is understanding of what type of coaching the individual needs. Some people need to be in a setting where it's a negative environment, like you're pushing the athlete, you're almost getting them angry to want to be better and pushing them that way. And some athletes respond to that. I run away and I'm scared. But thankfully, I've only had coaches that have been very understanding and have pulled me aside and recognized that I don't respond well to that negative type of coaching. I respond better to positive reinforcement. So if I don't swim well, they pull me aside and they say, look, here's what you did wrong, here's what we can correct, and here's what we're going to work on, instead of yelling at me and getting me upset and really doing the exact opposite. So a coach has really got to be aware of his athletes and what kind of people they are. I think that's a really important quality.
Arlene.
I think, as Beth said, everybody has touched upon things like commitment and perseverance and stick-to-itness. Those are givens with us, or else we wouldn't have gotten to where we've been. For me personally, also, like John has touched on, is being very coachable. All of us have to have been coachable to get where we have been. And it reminds me of something because I just moved into a new home. It technically isn't a new home, but it's a new home for me. And it took, I made the decision that I was going to do everything in the home myself. I was going to knock down walls and lay hardwood and lay ceramic tile, and that's what I was going to do. And with the help of some friends of mine who knew what they were doing, they would come and start me off. And so they would come and say, okay, here's your center line on your tile, take it away. And then to their surprise, when they'd come back in 2 days, I really had laid 800 square foot of tile, and it looked pretty darn good. And I said, I told you, I'm coachable, just tell me what I need, and I can do it, you know. And I think that is something that all athletes who are going to be successful need to be. They need to be coachable. They have to be able to listen, because there is a lot of things you need to hear as an athlete. You need to hear good things and bad things, but you need to hear them. As a coach, I think that for me personally as an athlete receiving coaching, I'm a very intense person, and I'm fired up. And I think that I need a coach that's more fired up than me. I've had several coaches that, okay, Arlene, all right, we're going to go out there and we're going to try for a knockout in the first round. Just doesn't do it for me. So as Beth was saying, you need to know your athlete and what each athlete needs. And I, as a coach, strive to find out what every one of my athletes needs. They each need different things. And I really try to find something positive in every single event they participate in. I had several athletes competing in an event a couple weeks ago, and several people came up to me after the event and said, we've never seen anyone handle their athletes like you handle them. Just want to let you know, you're doing a great job with them. Several parents from other clubs. And I think one match in particular, my athlete in the first round was losing 7-0, which is, in our sport, you might as well bow out. And I know that's how my athlete felt when he came back to the coach's chair. And so I said to him, just win this round. Just win the next round. Don't worry about what the score is. Just win this next round for me. He ended up winning 8-7. But had I really dwelled on the fact that, oh my God, we're 7 points behind, we're never going to catch up, well, just do your best out there, which may have been some approach of a different coach. So I think always talking about the positive, even in the gloom and doom position, you have to find something positive for that athlete to take out of if you have bigger and better plans for that athlete.
Willie, you want to add something?
Yeah, just one final thing that I would like to stress to you what we used to do. As I said, my coach kind of mastered my sport, or taught me to master it. And he said one thing to me that I will always remember, and that was, okay, the old saying is practice make perfect. Now we're going to practice perfect. And when I go to practice, that's what I do. I don't leave the stadium until it's absolutely perfect.
Any other questions? Two people coming in.
Thanks, that was really helpful.
Thank you.
Thank
Good. Come on in. Great.
Hi. Thanks again. My name's Ben Tangwell. First of all, Hitler is not a good leader. Second of all, you all talked about being leaders in your fields. A big part of leadership studies is followers and followership. I was wondering if you all could say a few words about you being followers in your fields and also you having your own followers.
I think I did mention that it's important in the early going to be a good follower, and I wouldn't add much to that. Followership. Talk about the importance to be a good follower.
Well, I think we kind of danced around that. If we're followers, first you have to know where you're going in order to get there. So someone had to lead you there. And I think the leader at the beginning, the very beginning, and I mentioned about my mom, was my leader. I used to have a boss said, if you keep your train on the track, you're going to get there, but you got to move it to get there. So what moved me was the motivation of making her being satisfied or thinking that I was doing well. But to follow, you have to, in order to be a leader, you have to learn how to follow. And I don't know any other way to put it, but you have to start someplace. And that person that's an influence on you, you have to believe in them, to follow them so as that they can teach you the right way to go. I think, as my grandfather used to say it, I've been there, done that. So you have to understand what I've done so you can get where I have been.
Yeah?
Just want to let you guys know that I'm still following people. John is a mentor for me. He's a leader for me. He teaches me a lot of things. So whether we're leaders now in this chosen area, perhaps, we still have areas that we need to follow others. So it's a learning experience, constantly changing. But you have to choose what's important to you and where you want to lead. I think what's important for a leader too is to find something that really means a lot to them, that they are a leader in. You know, maybe right now you haven't found what that is, but for me, I might be a leader in the pool, but I really would like to try to lead the Paralympic movement in the best manner that I can. So, I mean, you have to choose what you want to be a leader in. And you also have to learn how to be a better leader through watching other leaders. So, and you do that by being a follower.
Arlene? I'm sorry.
I agree with what everybody's saying. We, I think, have made the point that we are coachable. Maybe my word of being a follower, your word of being a follower, and my word of being coachable, I think they're pretty close to being the same thing. I mean, I think we would not be where we're at right now if we weren't still following someone, if we still weren't looking out there for somebody to lead us, even though we're leading others. I know on a daily basis I am motivating young people and changing their lives. I know that. But that doesn't mean that I'm not looking for somebody to motivate me.
Buddy.
Just in short, in wrestling, I started off from the bottom. I started off as a ninth grader, about 14 years of age. I knew nothing about the sport, so I had to learn how to listen and prepare myself, and then after years, I became a leader. In business, I started off at the bottom. I had to learn how to listen and prepare myself, and now I'm a leader of making the best jump ropes in the world.
And it's true. He is, and they are the best. I would like to close on one quick thought with regards to followership and leadership before you ask real quick. A lot of people attach a qualitative value to leadership. You know, who's the captain of the team? Let's interview him, because somehow the captain, the leader, is a better person. They have more inherent value than the followers. And of course, that's absolute hogwash. You can achieve a lot of good things by being a darn good follower. And a leader can't accomplish anything without good followers. So there needs to be an understanding in terms of, in the hierarchy of human value, that being a follower is okay. And most Olympians understand that I'm going to learn a lot more if I listen than if I talk. And as a result, the Olympians who achieve leapfrogs of improvement, it's a result of their following skills, not their leadership skills. But here's where I think it's interesting. That at the end of my life, I'm sure I will look back at my most significant moments and I will measure them by the relationships I have. But history will look at me and measure my worth to society by the changes I've affected in other people. And that's how you can have a leader grow in proportion long after they're dead. That they get bigger and bigger and bigger because the impact of their leadership continues to grow and multiply. And teachers are like that because we never know where their influence will end. So leadership has a huge multi-generational value, but the person himself has got to be weighed just strictly on the basis of what their character really is. Now I turn it over to you.
Could you comment on respect for your opponent, and especially nowadays with the intimidation factor, how athletes, especially in professional sports, act, and how your opponents have helped you become a better athlete?
I'd like to start with Arlene on that because she's got some firsthand knowledge about the respect for opponents.
It's funny. My toughest opponent was a competitor from Spain. Her name was Coral Bistuer, and she was world champion prior to me making U.S. team, making Olympic team, and an incredible athlete. But the battles that the two of us had elevated our division and elevated female Taekwondo events for years to follow. People are still talking about the battles that we had. And although it's a strange thing, Coral and I never talked while we were both competitive. Hello at weigh-ins, yeah, good luck, we did that. But now we're the best of friends. At any event we attend, she's an international referee. I've coached several junior teams from this country, and after the event, we're gone. We're having coffee, we're having dinner, we're talking about all kind of things that are going on in our lives. And that's because I have an immense respect for Coral, and she has an immense respect for me as athletes and as people. So I think that there are two levels of respect. I respect a lot of athletes that I competed against as athletes, but I don't necessarily respect other things that they represent.
Can you talk about what the athletes do during the match, during a fight, and how they show off after a blow lands?
Oh yeah, we're having some difficulties because there's a lot of self-cheering in the competition. There'll be a point, or if they think that they are scoring a point, they'll and cheer, trying to influence the judges to say, really, was that a point, or okay. And it's, you can lose a point, you can lose a penalty. This used to be the rule. Now there had been some decisions made that when someone cheered, it actually made a difference in the outcome of the fight. The penalty came at the last second, or it declared that loss of a point made somebody lose. So now they're allowed to do that when they compete, and there's a lot of debate over that happening, and athletes being able to self-cheer and overindulge in enjoying their point.
Do you think that's disrespectful of the competition, to cheer yourself in the middle of a bout?
I think it is, yes. I would never do that. I encourage my athletes not to do that. I try to instill in them that there will be enough celebration if you win to make up for anything that you could do in the ring.
And I just like to add a personal perspective. I trained for 8 years of my life to be the fastest backstroker in the world. I was lucky enough to be so declared, and I haven't used that skill once since. There is no inherent value to my community at large for my ability to swim quickly while looking skyward. Unless I'm towing a boat to safety, I'm not helping my community. Therefore, the skill that I did that was so wonderful really wasn't that wonderful. Being a good Taekwondo athlete is of no long-term significance. Being able to land a double twisting dismount doesn't make me a better person. Therefore, the respect question, how should I respect my opponents? Not on the basis of they're better athletes than I am, or even that they're not better athletes. I should respect them because of the character of their humanness. I should show respect, not because they deserve it, but because I'd like to be the kind of person who's respectful. And good leaders teach that there is value to yourself to respect those around you. We should be polite because that's the way we are. Coming up, Mike?
John, I thought I had an answer to your question, but I just remembered Tom McMillan, Lynn Elmore, and Doug Collins refused to accept the silver medal in '72. So.
He's talking about the trivia question I posed earlier, right?
First of all, I'm an aging baby boomer, and my first Olympic memory is Billy Kidd at Tokyo in '64. And my question is, '68, you remember John Carlos, Tommy Smith, Spitz, 76, John there, the Olympic team in 1980, the hockey team. Do you have the perception that in the last 3 or 4 Olympics that the American people don't follow it as closely as they used to? That there's not as much, excitement about the Olympics that it was, in the 60s and the 70s? And does TV, have something to do with that and bringing it forefront in the 70s and then maybe overexposing in the 80s and 90s?
Are you addressing that to me?
Anybody.
I'll go to Willie first because he's seen more Olympics than I have.
Sir, I think the biggest change that we've seen in the Olympic Games and the Olympic movement and the attitude, they talk about how people act, so on and so forth, is this thing they call a dollar. There's so much money involved that athletes are making a tremendous amount of monies. The television is going to be so much commercial involvement, and I think it's all around that. Everybody's trying to make a buck, and I think that's where our biggest problems come in. It's not like the old days. It's not like the Dream Team. Why should the Dream Team be in the Olympic Games? You have to be in the NBA, the WBA. Now professional baseball is involved into the Olympic Games. You have to be in the professional ranks in a lot of these sports just to participate in the Olympic Games. Most of our tennis players are pros. So it's not like the old days. It's all becoming about the dollar, and I think that's the answer for it. What happened in 1968 with John Carlos and Tommy Smith was a political thing. Will we see it again? Probably not at that extent, but believe it or not, that John Carlos and Tommy Smith are well respected. They're on the speaking tour across the country now because they stood up for what they believed in a time that when it wasn't popular. But if they did it today, we wouldn't think much of it because we're accustomed to the change. We're seeing a change of America, a change of attitude in America, the change of people. But it took us 30 years to get to this point.
I also have a perspective that might be more pragmatic. In the 70s, when we watched Olga Korbut and Nadia Comaneci, the Soviets were the bad guys, the Americans were the good guys, and it mattered who won. Now that there is no bad guy per se, we have favored trading nation status with the Chinese, and the Cubans are welcomed. The rivalry isn't as interesting, and therefore you can't build that. So what television is now doing is they're building the human drama. His mother died of cancer, and he just overcame alcoholism. He broke his, whatever, and it makes the teary-eyed stories of the Paralympics pale in comparison, sadly, because that's how they're trying to get viewership. And at the same time, the rights fees for the Olympic telecasts have doubled and tripled on a quadrennial basis. So now they're spending billions of dollars for the right to show the broadcast. Well, the only way the networks can get the money back is by running thousands of commercials. And so the continuity is being broken up. And, frankly, America has an awful lot of other pastimes that draw for their attention. World Series, Super Bowl, Indy 500, Preakness, Tiger Woods, it just goes on and on and on. And so it's hard that anybody can follow the depth of the Olympics the way they used to. I'm personally very friendly with a 1936 Olympian track and field guy who used to have his name as big as Tiger Woods on the front page of the LA Times in 1936. before the Super Bowl. Before the, and what's happened is that everyone's clamoring for a piece of that pie and the slices get really small. Let me close because we've run a little bit long and I apologize for that. I think that the most important thing, what I wanted to show you was the Olympic torch. The Olympic torch is on a relay on its way to the Salt Lake Games in 2002. And it's got a flame on the top of it that is passed from torch to torch, and the flame symbolizes the highest ideals of the Olympic movement. What draws the public to the flame, not that we're moths, but what draws the American public to the Olympic ideals of the flame is the ideal itself. It's not the torch, it's not the glass, it's not the flame itself, but it's the idea behind it. The thought that maybe, just maybe, the Olympics can change the lives of the people who merely watch them, that people's lives might be enhanced, that we might be inspired. If we watch a Dan Jansen fall down on the ice the morning his sister dies of cancer, if we watch Peekaboo Street win the gold medal after blowing out her ACL tendon, if we watch a diver Laura Wilkinson win a gold medal with a hairline fracture in her foot, maybe Monday morning at the office won't be that bad after all. And that's the inspirational value of the Olympics, and only that is the leadership value. The only thing that makes a leader is not their personality, not their ability to project, but rather the strength of their idea. And with that, I bring this session to a close. Thank you all for joining us. Come on down and have your picture taken. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.